Terrence Williams, at 34 years old, knew the language of wood better than he knew the language of people. Wood didn't lie. It showed its grain, its weaknesses, its strengths. You just had to know how to look. He made $46,000 a year as a finish carpenter, a salary that felt honest but perpetually tight in a city like Atlanta. His hands, calloused and mapped with the fine lines of 1,000 tiny cuts, were his greatest asset. They could turn a chaotic pile of lumber into a staircase that flowed like water or cabinets that closed with a whisper-soft click. For the last 6 months, these hands had been dedicated to a single purpose: renovating his mother-in-law's house in College Park. Now, standing in the newly finished kitchen at 7:14 p.m. on a Tuesday, covered in a fine layer of drywall dust that clung to his deep brown skin, he felt a weariness that went bone deep. The renovation was finally done. Every wall was perfect. Every joint was tight. And he had poured every spare hour, every weekend, every ounce of his skill into this place, all for free. It was his gift, his investment in what his wife Jolene called our family's future. He had no idea how wrong he was. The project had started with promises whispered over their modest dinner table in their $1,200 a month apartment. Jolene, with her radiant smile and eyes that could sell sand in a desert, had laid out the plan. Her mother, Vivian, was ready to downsize. Her 2-bedroom bungalow in College Park, a neighborhood rich with Black history and culture, was structurally sound but dated. "If we could just fix it up, baby," Jolene had said, her hand covering his on the worn laminate tabletop, "we could sell it for a huge profit. Mama would give us the extra money as a down payment on a real house. A house for us, in Buckhead." The word Buckhead hung in the air, a symbol of everything they weren't. Buckhead meant sprawling brick homes, manicured lawns, and a life far removed from their current reality, a reality where his $150 Red Wing boots were a major investment and her collection of $300 Michael Kors bags was funded by careful budgeting. Terrence, who drove a 2012 Toyota Camry with 187,000 miles on it, saw the dream in her eyes and wanted to build it for her. He saw a future with a yard for a dog, maybe a room for a child. He saw a life where his skill could provide more than just enough to get by. So he agreed. What would you have done? Have you ever poured your heart into something for someone you love, only to wonder if they saw the effort or just the result? Share your story in the comments below. The first month was a blur of demolition and dust. Terrence worked his 8-hour shift for his construction company, then drove straight to the College Park bungalow. Working under the harsh glare of portable halogen lamps until well after midnight, Jolene would often be there when he arrived. A takeout container of something from a local spot, a $25 meal that was meant to fuel him for another 6 hours of labor. "You're amazing," she'd say, kissing his dusty cheek. "This is going to change everything for us." His own money, from their joint account, paid for the crowbars, the heavy-duty trash bags, the blade replacements for his reciprocating saw. A $450 expense here, a $200 expense there. It added up. His mother-in-law, Vivian, was a constant, unnerving presence. A woman whose elegance was as sharp as her tongue. She would walk through the gutted rooms in her pristine $400 Tory Burch flats, a look of faint disgust on her face. "Terrence, do be careful with that wall. The plumbing is in there," she'd say, as if he couldn't read a blueprint. He was a master carpenter. He knew where the plumbing was. He'd spent 2 full days carefully mapping the house's skeleton. "Of course, Vivian," he'd reply, his voice even, his focus on the chalk line he was snapping. Jolene would laugh it off. "Mama's just nervous. She can't see the vision like we can." But Terrence saw it clearly. Vivian didn't see a son-in-law building her a more valuable asset. She saw a laborer. The facade of their domestic normalcy began to crack under the strain. Weekends ceased to exist. They were just 2 more days to hang drywall or run electrical wiring, while their friends were going to cookouts or seeing movies at the AMC Phipps Plaza 14, a $17 a ticket experience. Terrence was on his hands and knees, laying subflooring. Jolene's visits grew less frequent. She had brunch plans, networking events for her marketing job, a life that continued while his was paused inside the dusty shell of the bungalow. She'd call him from one of those brunches, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses in the background. "How's it going, baby? Are you almost done with the messy part?" The messy part was the foundation of the entire project, the grueling, unseen work that made the pretty parts possible. One Saturday afternoon in the 3rd month, he was installing new baseboards, a task requiring precision and patience. He was using a top-of-the-line DeWalt miter saw, a $600 piece of equipment that was his pride and joy. Jolene arrived with 2 of her friends, women who looked like they'd never held a hammer in their lives. They were dressed for an afternoon in Buckhead, wearing flowing dresses that probably cost more than his saw. Jolene gestured grandly at the half-finished living room. "And this is where the new entertainment center will go. I'm thinking a nice white oak. Something really clean and modern." She didn't introduce Terrence, who was kneeling on the floor, covered in sawdust. One of her friends glanced at him. "Is that the contractor?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. Jolene waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, well, that's just Terrence. He's handling all the work." Just Terrence, not my husband, not the man making this all possible. He felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach, but he said nothing. He just made his cut, the blade screaming through a piece of poplar, the sound filling the sudden, awkward silence. He placed the perfectly mitered corner, a flawless 45-degree angle, and moved to the next piece. The wood didn't judge. The financial toll was becoming undeniable. The budget for materials, which Vivian had contributed a meager $15,000 to, was long gone. Terrence was now funding the project from their joint savings, the account that was supposed to be for their future house. He used his Home Depot credit card, racking up thousands of dollars in debt for high-end fixtures, Benjamin Moore paint at $80 a gallon, and solid maple for the custom kitchen cabinets he was building from scratch. "It's an investment, honey," Jolene assured him over the phone. "Every dollar we put in, we'll get 3 back. I promise." He wanted to believe her. He needed to believe her. So he kept working, his hands bleeding, his back aching, fueled by a promise that was starting to feel as hollow as the walls he was filling with insulation. The cruelty wasn't always overt. It was in the small things, the casual dismissals that chipped away at his sense of worth. It was in the way Vivian would leave a list of tasks on the kitchen counter, written on her expensive cream-colored stationery, as if he were an employee. 1. Fix the squeak in the hallway floor. 2. Adjust the pantry door. 3. I'll clean up your sawdust. There was never a please or a thank you. There was only expectation. One evening, deep into the 4th month, Terrence was painstakingly installing crown molding. It was a difficult 2-person job, but Jolene was at a work gala, a $250 a plate affair. He had rigged up a support system with a few pieces of scrap wood, but it was slow, frustrating work. He was balancing on a ladder, his arms burning, when Vivian walked in. She didn't offer to help. She just watched him for a moment, her arms crossed. "You know," she said, her voice cool and analytical, "my friend Eleanor had her whole house done by a professional crew. They were in and out in 6 weeks." Terrence paused, the nail gun heavy in his hand. He looked down at her from the ladder. "I am a professional, Vivian." She gave a small, on tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. Of course, dear, it's just different when it's one person. Slower. She wasn't just commenting on the timeline. She was commenting on him, on his value. He was one man, not a crew. He was free labor, not a $50,000 contractor. He took a breath, turned back to the wall, and fired a nail perfectly into the stud. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet room. Jolene's detachment grew with every finished room. As the house transformed from a construction site into a beautiful, modern home, she started treating it like her personal showroom. She'd bring different friends by, pointing out features as if she had designed them herself. "I chose this specific quartz for the countertops," she'd say, running her hand over the $4,500 slab of stone Terrence had nearly broken his back installing. "It has such a lovely, subtle veining." She never once said, "Terrence built these cabinets by hand," or "Terrence laid every single one of these subway tiles." His work, his skill, his sacrifice, it was all being absorbed into her narrative, her vision. He was becoming invisible in the very space he was creating. The most painful moment came near the end of the 5th month. It was their wedding anniversary. Terrence had worked a 12-hour day at the bungalow to finish the master bathroom, wanting to surprise Jolene. He installed the final piece of hardware on the vanity he'd built, a sleek, brushed nickel pull that cost $12. He cleaned the entire room, wiped down every surface, and stood back to admire his work. It was beautiful. He called Jolene, his heart full, expecting her to be excited. "Hey baby, I finished the bathroom. It looks incredible. You should come see it." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh?" "Terrence, I'm sorry. I completely forgot to tell you. I'm out with the girls. We're celebrating Ashley's promotion. We're at St. Cecilia." St. Cecilia, a restaurant where a single plate of pasta cost $50. "It's our anniversary, Jolene," he said, his voice quiet. The silence on the phone was heavy, suffocating. "Oh my God," she finally whispered. "Baby, I am so sorry. I've just been so swamped. Listen, I'll make it up to you. We'll celebrate this weekend." But this weekend, like all the others, was for the house. He hung up the phone and sat on the edge of the brand new $800 bathtub he had just installed. The room was silent except for the sound of his own breathing. He looked at his hands, the source of all this creation, and for the first time he felt a profound and terrifying loneliness. The house wasn't a symbol of their future anymore. It was a monument to his erasure. The final weeks were a frantic push. A realtor had been engaged, and photos were scheduled. Jolene was suddenly present again, but her presence was that of a director, not a partner. She pointed out microscopic flaws he had already planned to fix. "There's a tiny paint drip on this trim, Terrence. The photographer will see that." She followed him from room to room, a walking punch list, her anxiety and ambition radiating off her. He worked silently, methodically, his heart encased in a layer of cold resignation. He finished the last task, adjusting a closet door so it closed without a sound, at 6:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. He packed up most of his tools, in leaving only a small toolbox with a few essentials he'd need for final touch-ups. He was exhausted, but a small part of him felt a flicker of pride. He had taken a worn-out old house and made it new again. He had kept his promise. What he didn't know was that Jolene had never intended to keep hers. The discovery happened on a Friday afternoon, 2 weeks after he'd finished the work. It was October 2nd at 3:47 p.m. The air was crisp, carrying the first real hint of autumn. Terrence had gotten a call from Jolene. "The stager is coming tomorrow morning and the photographer is right after. Can you please go over and make sure everything is perfect? And grab the rest of your tools? They can't be in the photos. Her voice was cheerful, excited. He agreed, a familiar sense of duty overriding his fatigue. He drove his Camry to the College Park bungalow, letting himself in with the key he still had. The house was silent and immaculate. The afternoon sun streamed through the new, energy-efficient windows he'd installed, illuminating the dust-free surfaces and gleaming hardwood floors he had sanded and refinished himself. It smelled of fresh paint and lemon cleaner, not of sawdust and sweat. It already felt like it belonged to someone else. He walked through the rooms, a ghost in his own creation. He checked the cabinet doors, the faucets, the light switches. Everything was perfect. His last toolbox was sitting in the corner of the master bedroom, right where he'd left it. As he bent to pick it up, he noticed a manila folder sitting on the new nightstand he had built. It was thick and official looking, with the logo of a prominent Atlanta real estate appraisal company on it. Curiosity, sharp and unwelcome, pricked at him. This had to be the appraisal Jolene had ordered to set the selling price. He knew he shouldn't look, that it was an invasion of privacy, but a gut feeling, a cold dread, compelled him. His hands, which could measure a cut to a 16th of an inch, trembled slightly as he opened the clasp. He scanned the first few pages: property details, square footage, comparable sales in the neighborhood. Then he got to the valuation summary. His eyes widened. The pre-renovation value was listed at $210,000. The post-renovation appraised value was $325,000. He had single-handedly added $115,000 to the value of the home. A surge of pride, fierce and bright, washed over him. He had done that. His skill, his labor. It was real. All quantifiable value. He kept reading, flipping through the pages, a small smile on his face. And then he saw it. It was on an addendum page, under a section titled Summary of Improvements and Capital Contributions. There was a detailed list of the renovations: new kitchen, 2 new bathrooms, refinished floors, new lighting, custom cabinetry. Next to each item was a cost estimate, totaling the material costs he knew were mostly paid from their joint account. But it was the line at the bottom that made the air leave his lungs. It read, Owner Equity Contribution, Labor, J. Williams, $114,250. J. Williams, Jolene Williams. He read it again and again. The letters seemed to blur on the page. She had not only taken credit for his 6 months of grueling, unpaid labor, but she had quantified it and claimed it as her own financial contribution. It wasn't our investment. It wasn't a family project. In the cold, hard language of a legal document, it was her equity. The whispers about their future in Buckhead, the takeout dinners, the praise. It was all a lie. A calculated, meticulously documented lie. He felt a profound, sickening cold spread through his chest. He was not her partner. He was an asset to be exploited. Just then, he heard the front door open. Terrence, are you here? It was Vivian. She walked into the bedroom, stopping short when she saw him standing there with the folder in his hand. Her eyes narrowed. What are you doing with that? She asked, her voice sharp. Terrence couldn't speak. He just held up the page, the damning line item visible. He watched her face. There was no surprise, no confusion. There was only a flash of annoyance, as if he had caught her in a minor social faux pas. She sighed, a sound of pure exasperation. She walked over, plucked the folder from his numb fingers, and placed it back on the nightstand. She straightened a wrinkle in the duvet he had just smoothed out. Then she looked at him, her expression one of utter dismissal. Don't be so dramatic, she said. You were just the handyman. Just the handyman. 3 words. 3 words that took 6 months of his life, his love, his body-breaking labor, and reduced it to a simple transaction where he was the only one who hadn't been paid. 3 words that confirmed he was nothing more than a tool to be used and discarded. In that moment, something inside Terrence broke. But what grew in its place was not rage, but a terrifying, crystalline clarity. He looked at Vivian, the woman whose net worth he had just increased by over $100,000. He looked around the perfect room he had built. He felt nothing. The love, the hope, the exhaustion, it was all gone, burned away by the cold truth. He didn't shout. He didn't argue. He calmly bent down, picked up his $250 toolbox, and turned around. He walked out of the bedroom, down the hallway with the floors that no longer squeaked, through the living room with its flawless crown molding, and out the front door he had hung and painted himself. He did not look back. He got into his old Toyota, placed the toolbox on the passenger seat, and drove away. He didn't go home. He drove until he saw the glass tower of a downtown law firm, its windows reflecting the cold, clear blue of the autumn sky. He had never felt so betrayed, but he had also never felt so free. The drive home from the lawyer's office was a study in controlled numbness. He had spent 90 minutes with a woman named Alana James, a sharp, empathetic attorney whose hourly rate was a staggering $450. He'd laid out the entire story, his voice low and steady, showing her the pictures on his phone, the before, during, and after shots he'd taken to document his progress. He explained the conversation with Vivian, the 3 words that had severed the last thread of his loyalty. Alana had listened without interruption, her expression hardening with every detail. When he finished, she looked at the photo of the appraisal page he'd had the presence of mind to snap before he left. She put it in writing, Alana said, a note of disbelief in her voice. This is a gift. Terrence, a very stupid, very arrogant gift. She explained the concept of a mechanic's lien in the state of Georgia. Because he had never signed a waiver or a contract stating his labor was a gift, and because he had materially improved the property, he was entitled to compensation for the fair market value of his work. The appraisal itself was the ultimate proof. Jolene and Vivian had already done the valuation for him. He pulled into the parking lot of his apartment complex at 6:15 p.m. He sat in his car for a full 10 minutes, the engine off, gathering himself. He had to go inside and face her. He had to pretend that everything was normal, just for a little while longer. Alana's instructions were clear. Do not confront her. Do not let her know you know anything. We need to file the lien and the divorce papers simultaneously. The element of surprise is our greatest weapon. So he had to play a part. He had to become a stranger in his own home. He walked up the 3 flights of stairs to their apartment, the key feeling alien in his hand. When he opened the door, the smell of roasted chicken filled the air. Jolene was in the kitchen, humming along to a playlist on their small Bluetooth speaker. She was wearing a $120 silk blouse and jeans. She looked beautiful, and the sight of her sent a shard of ice through his heart. "Hey, baby," she said, turning to smile at him. It was the same smile she'd used when she convinced him to start the renovation. Now it looked predatory. "You're late. Everything okay at your mom's?" "Yeah, perfect," he lied, his voice sounding unnervingly normal. "Just did a final walkthrough, grabbed my tools. The place looks great. The stager will be happy." He walked over and kissed her on the cheek. Her skin was warm, but he felt a repulsive chill. It was the most difficult thing he had ever done. "I'm just going to shower before dinner," he said, needing to escape. In the bathroom, he turned on the water as hot as he could stand it and leaned his forehead against the cool tile of the shower wall. He stayed there until the steam filled the room, hiding him. He wasn't just washing off the day's grime. He was trying to wash off the last 6 months, to wash off the feeling of her betrayal. He was playing dumb, but inside he was a whirlwind of cold, calculated rage. Dinner was surreal. Jolene chattered excitedly about the upcoming sale. The realtor thinks we can list it for $330,000, maybe even $335,000, to start a bidding war. Can you believe it? And after Mama pays off her small mortgage, we're looking at a profit of almost $180,000. Our half will be $90,000. That's the entire down payment for the townhouse in Buckhead, Terrence. We did it. We? The word was a bitter poison on her tongue. He just nodded, pushing a piece of chicken around his plate. That's great, Jay, he said, his voice a monotone. She didn't seem to notice his lack of enthusiasm, too caught up in her own triumph. I've already been looking at furniture. There's a sofa at West Elm. It's $3,200, but it would be perfect for the new living room. She went on and on, designing a future he now knew he would have no part of. He listened, making a mental list. Every dollar amount she mentioned was another piece of evidence of her intent. She wasn't just dreaming. She was spending money they didn't have, and money that was predicated on his stolen labor. While she planned her new life, he was planning his exit. After dinner, while she was on the phone with her mother, he quietly went into their small home office. He found their financial statements, the deed to Vivian's house he had a copy of, and the credit card statements showing the thousands of dollars in materials he had purchased. He took photos of everything with his phone. He was no longer just a carpenter. He was building a case. The following Monday was the beginning of his new life. He took a personal day from his job, telling his foreman he had a family emergency. The emergency was his own. His first stop, at 9 a.m., was a bank. He opened a new checking account in his name only, depositing the $1,284 he had in cash, saved from a side job he'd done before the renovation. It wasn't much, but it was his. Next, he met Alana James at her office on Peachtree Street. The lobby was all glass and cool marble, a world away from the sawdust and sweat he was used to. Alana was all business. "Okay, Terrence," she said, gesturing for him to sit. "Let's build this. I need everything you have. Every receipt, every photo, every text message where Jolene or Vivian acknowledged you were working on the house." For the next 3 hours, they compiled the evidence. Terrence had been meticulous without even realizing it. He had a folder on his phone with nearly 500 photos, time-stamped, showing the progression of the work. He had the Home Depot and Lowe's statements, totaling $28,719 in materials charged to their joint credit cards over 6 months. He had text messages. E1 from Jolene in July. "Can you please finish the guest bathroom this weekend? My aunt is coming and Mama wants it to be done." One from Vivian in August. "The light fixture you installed in the dining room is flickering. It needs to be fixed." Each message, though innocuous at the time, was now a critical piece of evidence. They were directives, orders given to a worker, not requests made to a family member. Alana was typing furiously, her paralegal scanning documents beside her. "This is incredible," Alana said, looking up from her screen. "They acted like you were their employee, but they never paid you. The appraisal is the smoking gun. They can't argue the value of your labor because they're the ones who certified it." She pulled up a spreadsheet. "Let's quantify your time. How many hours a week? On average?" Terrence thought back. "At least 30 hours during the week after my regular job, and probably 20 to 25 hours over the weekend. Every weekend. For 6 months." Alana's fingers flew across the keyboard. 24 weeks, 55 hours a week, a total of 1,320 hours. "Now, what's the going rate for a master finish carpenter in Atlanta?" she asked. For high-end custom work, side jobs, I charge about $85 an hour, he said. It felt strange to put a price on the work he had done for family. Alana multiplied the numbers. The total came to $112,200. It's almost exactly what the appraisal quoted, she said, a grim smile on her face. They literally appraised your slavery, Terrence. And now they're going to pay for it. The plan was set. The next morning, Alana would file the mechanic's lien with the Fulton County Superior Court for the full amount of $114,250 using their own appraisal number against them. Simultaneously, she would file for divorce on the grounds of irretrievable breakdown, citing financial fraud as a contributing factor. A process server had already been hired. He would deliver the lien notice to Vivian and the divorce papers to Jolene at her downtown marketing office. The strike would be coordinated, swift, and devastating. Terrence left the law office feeling lighter than he had in months. The initial retainer for Alana's services had taken almost all of his cash, a $1,000 investment in his own liberation. It was the best money he had ever spent. The strike happened on Tuesday, October 6th at 11:30 a.m. It was a beautiful, sunny Atlanta day. The kind of day that makes you believe good things can happen. Terrence was at his job site, installing baseboards in a luxury condo, his movements precise and automatic. His mind, however, was miles away, picturing a scene he would never witness but could imagine with perfect clarity. He imagined a professional-looking man in a nondescript sedan pulling up to the curb in front of the College Park bungalow. He imagined Vivian opening her newly painted front door, a smile on her face, perhaps expecting a flower delivery. He imagined the smile vanishing as she was handed a thick legal envelope and told, "You've been served." His phone, which had been silent all morning, buzzed in his pocket at 11:47 a.m. It was Jolene. He ignored the call. It buzzed again and again. Then the texts started. The first one, at 11:48 a.m. He read, "Terry, what is going on? Some guy just showed up at my office and gave me papers. Call me now." He took a deep breath and continued his work, measuring twice, cutting once. The saw blade bit into the wood with a clean, satisfying scream. A minute later, another text from Jolene. "Divorce? Are you insane? What is this?" Then a call from a number he didn't recognize. He let it go to voicemail. It was Vivian. Her voice, usually so composed and cool, was high-pitched and frantic. "Terrence, what is the meaning of this? I have a legal notice here that says you've put a lien on my house for over $100,000. This has to be a mistake. You need to call me back this instant and fix this. The sale is supposed to close in 2 weeks. You are ruining everything." He saved the voicemail. It was evidence. The onslaught continued. Jolene's texts became more desperate. 12:05 p.m. "Pick up the phone, Terrence. We need to talk about this. This isn't you." 12:15 p.m. "My boss saw the whole thing. I'm so embarrassed. How could you do this to me at my job?" 12:30 p.m. "And what is this lien on my mother's house? Her realtor just called her in a panic. The title company flagged it. You're destroying her financially after everything we did for you." Everything we did for you. The audacity of that statement was breathtaking. He felt a surge of cold fury, but his hands remained steady as he fit a piece of trim into place. He was building something new, while their world was being systematically dismantled. The phone rang again. It was Jolene. This time, he answered, holding the phone to his ear with his shoulder as he worked. "What do you want?" "Jolene?" he asked, his voice calm. "What do I want?" she shrieked, her voice cracking. "I want an explanation, a divorce, a lien. Are you trying to destroy my family?" "Your family tried to steal from me," he stated simply. You took 6 months of my life and my labor, quantified it, and claimed it as your own equity. You were going to use it against me in a divorce you were clearly already planning. I just beat you to the punch." There was a stunned silence on the other end. He could hear her ragged breathing. How did you know?" she stammered. "You left the appraisal on the nightstand," he said. "The nightstand I built for you." He used his nail gun, the percussive thwack-thwack, punctuating the silence. "Terrence, baby, listen to me," she said, her voice suddenly shifting from anger to a desperate, syrupy sweetness. It was the voice she used when she wanted something. "It was a misunderstanding, a mistake. The appraiser must have written it up wrong. We can fix this. Just remove the lien. We can talk about the divorce later. Please. You know I love you." He almost laughed. "No, Jolene. I know you love what I can do for you. There's a difference." He recalled her friends asking if he was the contractor. He recalled Vivian's 3 words. "Your mother called me the handyman, and a handyman gets paid for his work. The bill is $114,250. My lawyer's number is in the papers. Have your lawyer call her?" And with that, he hung up. He sent a text to Alana. "They know." She replied a moment later, "Good. Let them panic." He picked up another piece of trim and got back to work. The consequences cascaded with brutal efficiency. The first to fall was the house sale. The potential buyers, a young couple who had been thrilled with the renovated property, were notified by the title company of the lien, which created a cloud on the title. A $114,250 encumbrance on a $325,000 property was a non-starter. Their lender immediately withdrew financing. Within 24 hours of the lien being filed, the buyers officially backed out of the contract, their $5,000 earnest money returned. The house was unsellable. Jolene's dream of a $710,000 Buckhead townhouse evaporated overnight. Their mortgage pre-approval had been contingent on receiving a $90,000 gift from Vivian from the proceeds of the sale. With no sale, there were no proceeds. The lender for the townhouse sent Jolene a formal letter rescinding their offer of financing. She called Terrence, sobbing. "They pulled the mortgage. The house is gone. You did this." He listened silently before replying, "No, Jolene, your greed did this. You tried to build a future on a foundation of lies. It was bound to collapse." Vivian was trapped. She was living in a beautiful, newly renovated house that she could neither sell nor borrow against. The lien meant no bank would touch the property. She was stuck with her current mortgage, the property taxes on a home now assessed at a much higher value, and a massive, legally binding debt to the son-in-law she had dismissed as a mere handyman. Her friends in her social circle, the ones who had heard for months about the professional renovation, soon learned the truth. The story, in all its humiliating detail, spread like wildfire through her church and her bridge club. Vivian, a woman who cared deeply about appearances, became a pariah, a subject of gossip and pity. The divorce proceedings were even more devastating for Jolene. Alana James used the appraisal document as Exhibit A in their filing. It was irrefutable proof of Jolene's intent to defraud Terrence in the division of marital assets. Her own documented attempt to claim his labor as her equity made her look calculating and malicious in the eyes of the court. Her lawyer, a high-priced attorney from a downtown firm whose retainer likely cost $10,000, advised her to settle quickly. Any judge would see this for what it was. Jolene's professional life suffered as well. The scene with the process server at her open plan office had been witnessed by dozens of colleagues, including senior partners. The humiliation was immense. Her performance at work cratered as she dealt with the fallout. She was distracted, emotional, and her carefully constructed image as a polished, ambitious professional was shattered. She had wanted to project an image of wealth and success, but the truth revealed a desperate, grifting reality. The final blow came during settlement negotiations. Jolene and Vivian, through their lawyers, offered to pay Terrence $20,000 to remove the lien. Alana laughed when she told him. "I told them our price is non-negotiable, $114,250 plus my legal fees. They can either sell the house and pay you from the proceeds, which they can't do until you release the lien, which you won't do until you're paid, or Vivian can take out a personal loan to pay you." They were caught in a legal vice of his making. Defeated, they agreed. It took them 3 weeks to scramble together the funds, forcing Vivian to liquidate a large portion of her retirement portfolio, incurring massive tax penalties. The check was delivered to Alana's office. It was for $121,500, covering the full amount of the lien and every dollar of Terrence's legal costs. The war was over. He had won. 6 months later, Terrence stood in a space that smelled of cedar and potential. It was his own workshop, a 1,500 square foot leased space in a light industrial park near the West End. The check from the settlement had changed everything. After splitting the marital assets, which, without the house profit, were minimal, and paying his taxes, he was left with enough capital to do what he'd only dreamed of. He quit his job, bought the professional-grade tools he'd always wanted, a $4,000 saw-stop table saw, a heavy-duty planer, a full set of Festool sanders, and incorporated his own business, Valor Woodworks. The name felt right. It was about recognizing the true value of his own skill and character. His first client found him in the most unexpected way. A woman named Dr. Anika Sharma, a professor at Emory, was in the process of buying a home, and her real estate attorney had stumbled upon the public record of Terrence's lien against Vivian's property while doing a title search for another client. Intrigued by the specificity of the filing, custom maple cabinetry, hand-scraped hardwood floor refinishing, installation of crown molding, and custom built-ins, she had looked him up. She called him out of the blue. "Mr. Williams," she'd said, her voice warm and direct, "I'm not sure if this is a strange question, but are you the carpenter who filed that lien on a property in College Park?" Terrence had paused, unsure how to respond. "I am," he said carefully. "Well," she continued, "my husband and I are closing on an old Tudor in Druid Hills, and it has a library with absolutely no bookshelves. Based on the description in that legal filing, you do exactly the kind of work we're looking for. Would you be interested in giving us a quote?" Now he was installing the final shelf in that library. It was a floor-to-ceiling masterpiece of solid walnut, with a rolling ladder and intricate dental molding that matched the home's historic character. Dr. Sharma and her husband watched him work, their faces full of awe. "It's more beautiful than we ever imagined," she said, running a hand over the smooth satin finish. Terrence felt a quiet satisfaction that was worth more than any paycheck. He was being paid well for this project. The contract was for $35,000, but more importantly, he was being seen. His work, his artistry, was being celebrated. His name was on the contract, his hands were on the wood, and the value he created was finally his own. He finished the last detail and packed up his tools. As he was leaving, Dr. Sharma handed him the final check. "You know," she said, "my attorney told me that filing a lien like that is a bold move. You must have been pushed to the edge." Terrence looked at his hands, the hands that had built and dismantled his old life, and were now building his new one. He thought of Jolene and Vivian, and for the first time, he felt not anger, but a distant pity. They had been so obsessed with the appearance of wealth that they had failed to understand its source. They thought value was something you could acquire, a number on an appraisal. He knew now that true value is something you create. It's the integrity in a well-made joint, the honesty of a straight cut, the pride in a job done right. It's the strength to stand up for your own worth, even when the people closest to you refuse to see it. He said to Dr. Sharma with a small smile, but it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. We all face moments where our value is questioned. Have you ever had to fight to be recognized for your true worth? Let us know your story in the comments. Your experience could be the inspiration someone else needs to see their own value today. Thank you for watching Love Beyond Pride.